Now, when I get to the end of creating a 360 video of any kind, but especially a collage one like this that uses a lot of sequences, I might be working in multiple sequences in the same project. Well, just so you know, you can drag sequences into sequences. So when Portals is done, if I just want to append it on the end of Buffalo as a quick way to finish out the project, I can do so. Probably the best way of doing that would be to duplicate Buffalo, call this, 360 collage Final Cut or something like that. Final version 2, I swear, draft, this is the one, that kind of thing. And then I'm going to double click that and open that one. And then I'm going to, because this way I'm leaving Buffalo untouched if I need to go back to it. I'm going to grab Portals and literally click and drag it into the final project here, the final sequence. And now I've got the whole thing ready to go. And here at the end, I'm going to set an out point. I'm going to chop all these off at the end here. If you hold shift while you're using the razor tool, it'll cut every track all at once. So that way I can lop off all the ragged ends of these clips. I like to put a little bit of black video at the end so that I don't end on a frozen frame. So I go new black video, hit OK, drag it in, and I only need a little bit of it. And then I'm gonna hit O on the timeline to set an out point. The in point is going to be the very beginning of my project, and I'm ready to export. So I'm going to save this project and go File, Export Media. Now, exporting 360 is awfully similar to exporting anything else in Premiere, except there is a very important tick box that you have to make sure is ticked. And it's down here at the bottom of the video settings. So just as a refresher, we're going to be using, for our purposes, H.264. The only other 360 friendly codec that I would suggest is HEVC. The advantage of HEVC is you can get higher, potentially higher quality with a lower file size. The disadvantage is I've seen a lot more artifacts, like breaking up of imagery and blockiness, especially in large areas of fields of color, like animation or abstraction or big empty skies or things like that don't do super well in H.265. H.264 handles that a little better, but bigger file sizes. I'm going to stick with H.264. And here you set not only the name of the file, but also where it's going to export to. Mine's all set up correctly. So then I'm going to drag down here. And first things first, I'm going to confirm that VR video is VR is checked. There's almost no reason this shouldn't be if our sequence has been set up correctly from the get-go. But this is the kind of thing that if it's not there, it simply won't work in any player that you're expecting to be VR. This gives the MP4 file a kind of metadata that lets any player that supports VR video know this is spherical video. It's not just a rectangle. And we would also confirm that these are the familiar settings we want. This is indeed a monoscopic, not 3D sequence, and it's a 360 video. And 180 is the vertical. So we're good there. The only other thing that I want to talk to you about here is bitrate. And bitrate needs to be really, really high for 360 video. Bitrate is essentially the slider that decides how good your image looks after being compressed. The lower you slide it, the smaller your file size. You can see an estimated file size down here, and as I lower this, it can get it ridiculously small, but it'll look terrible. As I raise it, all of a sudden we've got a 5 gig movie. And it'll look better. But there is a point of diminishing returns, right? There's no reason to output 5 gigs when 3 gigs will do, or something like that, you know? So in our case for 360 video, you have to be aware that you're basically outputting 4K or higher. And furthermore, that 4K is going to be stretched all around the viewer's head. So it actually looks a lot worse than 4K would, because if 4K was just on the size of a TV in front of you, it wouldn't stretch all the way around your head, right? So, so we're trying to at least think about bit rates that would be appropriate for 4K, if not higher. I like to hit 80 if I can, and so in Premiere, you can choose either a constant bit rate where you just set a bit rate and that's what it is the whole time, or you can choose a variable bit rate where you can give it a target and then a maximum. So say like, well, try to hover around 80, but if you need to in really complicated scenes, you can go as high as 100, something like that, because it doesn't totally know how often it will do this. That's why estimated file size is estimated, one of the big reasons. But it'll do a little bit of a better job, but take a lot longer if you do 2-pass. Like it'll go through twice and compress and export. But either way you do it, VBR 1-pass if you are rushed for time, VBR 2-pass if this is your final export and you can let it run all night, or CBR and just skip the VBR business. Any of those, I want you to hit somewhere between 60 at the lowest and probably more like 80 to get a really nice looking output file. Now, the only caveat, the only caution I would give you is if you are publishing this to go directly to something like an Oculus Go or a Gear VR or some headset that's going to like run the MP4 file off of it, then you want to base not only the bitrate settings but also the resolution settings, which are up here and grayed out because we've chosen to match our source. If you are authoring for one of those headsets, you know, follow the guidelines for those headsets. I've read, for example, that Oculus Go does well with literal 4K, like 4096 by 2048. Any higher than that, it tends to choke a little. It can't necessarily push that many pixels on that portable device. And so if you know you're outputting for a film fest, a 360 film fest that gives you specs, it's like, we're showing these on Samsung Gear VRs, you need to give us 4096 by 2048 or something like that, then you would uncheck this and type in the actual specs that you've been asked for right here. If you do author a 360 video that looks good on a computer, but then you play it on a phone or something like that, and it just can't seem to keep up, you'll need to knock these down a little bit, and then this can be your kind of master file. But I'm gonna output this way because I'm thinking I'm authoring for YouTube, and I would rather give them a bigger file, a bigger, higher quality file, and then let their algorithm deal with what it's going to do to it. So I'm doing this views camera resolution, and I'm gonna do a 2-pass from 80 to 100, and I will export that file, and that file should then be uploaded to YouTube, and then you can turn it into me by emailing me the URL from YouTube.